Welcome to HR Voices. A podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy. Hi everybody and welcome to the next edition of HR Voices. I'm joined today by my fellow presenter Mary Asante, and we are talking to Claire Watt of Ditton HR. Now Claire has been in the HR Independence Network for some time, and actually she was one of our award winners at our conference last year, so 2022. And she was a finalist again this year. So I'm really excited to have Claire, very successful business owner and running a very good business model. And this is to talk to Claire about her take on how she structured her business using an associate model. So Claire, let me ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your company.
Okay, well, thank you, first of all, for having me on your podcast. It's very exciting and I really enjoyed the conference last week. I hope you've all recovered from that.
Just about.
Yeah. So basically, I started up Ditton HR, it's 11 years ago now, after having sort of 20 years in the corporate world. My last job before I took the leap was as Director of People at Samaritans, responsible for the staff and the volunteers. I then decided I wanted to start my own business, have more flexibility, sort of choose my client base, etc. So I took that leap, which obviously is quite a scary leap, as we all know. But I haven't looked back really. So for 6 years, it was just me on my own doing client work, all word of mouth referrals. And it was a nice business. It kept, ticked all my boxes. But then I kept having to turn work away. And so I thought, this isn't good. I need to build on this and kind of decide where I'm going to go with it next. And that was about 5 years ago now. And that's when I started to take on associates and build up my sort of network of the team, as it were, like a virtual HR team. And it's just, I haven't looked back since then, really. It's really built up. I've got about 18 of us now on the network of associates I use on a regular basis. And it's been a great model for me over the last 5 years.
That is really great. Thank you for that background, Claire. And congratulations for all your achievements to date. Quite impressive, really. So you do talk about the associate model, and I'm just wondering if you can elaborate a bit more on what an associate model is for anyone who is listening, who isn't quite familiar with the term, because I do think that sometimes the word associate might mean different things to different people. And HR is well known for using lots of technologies that very few people kind of go, huh? What are they saying?
Yes.
What's that about? So, yeah.
Yes. So I suppose when I was taking that move from just being on my own to starting to expand the business further, I didn't really want to have an employee. I didn't want to have an office because we had offices in those days. I didn't want all those sort of overheads and that commitment. I found that quite overwhelming. So I started off with finding people. They were mainly people that had really successful HR careers, and then they'd taken quite a number of years off to have children, and they were looking to get back in. So they didn't really want to go into an office environment. They wanted something really flexible that used their skills and earned them, the money they should be earning, really. So that's how it started. So the first couple were people that hadn't worked for a few years, and I basically, sort of encouraged them and coached them back into the workplace, sort of mentored them. So I was very much overseeing what they were doing and providing obviously the documents and reviewing their documents, etc. And, they're still with me to this day, 5 years on, loving it because they're doing all sorts of different things. So that model then developed. So I got I needed more and more people. So I sourced people through, word of mouth and interviewing them and finding people that really met kind of the way I wanted to work. And the beauty of it is, in my eyes, is that they can basically accept work if they want to. They can turn it down if they don't want it, if they're too busy, if they want to have time with, caring commitments, children, whatever. And I can match up their skills and their expertise and their personalities with the client's needs. And that's the beauty of it. I always manage to, well, I say always, nearly always manage to match them up perfectly. So, I have that flexibility there. I don't have an employee employed 4 days a week, that I have to use their time first. And it may be that they're not skilled in that area, or they're not the kind of person that might meet that small business's need. So I have that flexibility, which works for both the associates, myself, and the client.
That's really great. I think I like the first part of what you said, which is you started off, although you were looking for associates to help you to deliver your projects, you actually started off doing some great things, which is helping mothers get back into work, which in itself is a great way of giving back to the community generally. So well done.
Yeah, and very much these were people that were really experienced, really successful, really qualified people in the business environment who've taken maybe 5-6 years out, maybe a bit longer, and they were literally looking at taking a really low paid job doing something not related to HR just because they wanted the flexibility. So I wanted to offer them that flexibility, plus to be able to use the skills that they've qualified to and earn the money they should be earning. And that's why it works really well, and that's why they've stayed with me for so long, because they love that flexibility. And it suits everyone. Like I said, it suits the client, it suits me, it suits them. And that's why I like the associate model, for me anyway. I mean, there is a point, obviously, where you need to think about employing people. We can talk about that later, maybe, when that point might be. But at the moment, I've got these 18 people. They've all got different areas of specialism, and I can pull on their needs as and when my clients need them. So that gives me that flexibility, and I can meet the needs of the client better.
And how do you manage that with your clients? Because I suppose those perhaps that are working independently still and are thinking of growing their model in that way might be quite anxious about how their clients might respond to having a different person do a different piece of work. So how does that work? How do your clients feel about it?
So mainly with most of my small businesses, they will have one HR person from Ditton HR. So their main consultant, who they speak to 95% of the time. When they're on holiday or unavailable, I have cover for them. So they know who sort of the cover is. So they've built the relationship up with that main person. And obviously they know me as well. I have twice a year, I'll do a free strategic review with them. And obviously I'm in contact with the client monthly as well. So they've got me in the background. But if it's something specific, so to give you an example, I've got one HR consultant who's a generalist doing everything for a client. They now need some recruitment done. We're bringing in somebody else, the recruitment specialist, to do that recruitment, because they've done it for years and they are really experienced in that. Doesn't mean the HR consultant couldn't do it, but I want to bring in the best person. So they then have 2 people. And obviously recruitment is additional workload, so it leaves the consultant free to do all the other HR stuff. Because if you're then bogged down with recruitment and a big disciplinary comes in, you might not have the capacity to do that, bearing in mind a lot of the consultants have got up to 10 clients each that are working on at any one time. I've also got people that come in and do projects. So it may be that they've got an HR consultant that's their main person, but then they need a pay and reward project done. I'll bring in the pay and reward person. Or if there's an investigation that needs doing, I might bring someone else in for that. So they've always got me and their main consultant. So that's how it suits the client. But behind them is a team, which gives, I've won work on that model because they are nervous about going with an independent HR consultant who, when they're on holiday or off sick, they've got no one else. So that's how I sort of said, well, you'll always have somebody. We're always there and we're always talking. We always know what each other's doing. We've got everything stored on our Teams network so we can see each other's clients if necessary. So it's not like if they're not there, nothing happens. And I think that's a really good way of meeting the client's need as well.
Yeah, that sounds like it works really well.
And I guess that's also the element of you probably training your associates so that they understand your model, your values, your clients, and sort of the value proposition to the clients, etc. So
exactly.
If they're getting Mary, Charlotte, or Claire, they're still getting some sort of consistency all through.
Exactly. They're using my library of documents as the basis. We've got the same employment law and things that we use. We're all on the Teams network, so we're all coming across as consistent. And when they start with me, I do like an induction program, and I have like an induction manual, which basically explains exactly that, like what we do, what Ditton HR standard is like, how I train them up, what they have in the background to support them as well, because that's what they're getting out of it. Okay, they're getting the clients, they don't need to do business development, but they're also getting that brand that's already been built. and they're getting my mentoring really.
Mm.
And that's how it works.
That sounds great. And I'd imagine that probably in terms of managing a team, an associate team, it's probably no different to managing a remote employed team, really. I mean, you're all, remote is the way we all seem to be going now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we started this, it was a couple of years before COVID. Say the word COVID. I haven't said that for a while. So we were all working remotely. So we were already set up like that anyway. We haven't got an office. We don't all, I mean, we do meet up regularly and we're always chatting. We've got, group chats and everything. So we are kind of a virtual team. So it's just the same as managing that. Now it's all moved to virtual. It's very similar to what we do anyway. And although they're all associates, and some of them have got their own clients independently as well as their own companies, some of them, we're very much a team as well. We're very much all together in this. So it does work really well. But then obviously I don't have to do things like you have to do with employees necessarily. And, like you might not need to do an appraisal, but you're still going to be managing their performance in a different way.
I think you've touched on a really good point there that I want you to explore a bit, which is that the fact that someone is an associate doesn't mean that all the work they do is necessarily the work you feed them, but they have the liberty or the freedom to be able to sort of grow their own business and sort of have their own clients as well. And the reason why I want us to explore that bit is the fact that a lot of the time people starting into consultancy may start by being associate for well-established consultants before they go on their own, or like you said, some may still stick with the main consultancy whilst sort of also doing their own thing.
Yeah, so it can work well in that respect. I mean, most of mine have stayed wanting the flexibility and not wanting the stress of having their own business. Another one did have their own business, but has shut that down now because they're getting so much through me and other sources. So but it can work any way. You can have, I think it's a great way to get building your business up until you're confident enough to then build it up yourself. Definitely.
And does it? I mean, I'm sure it probably does benefit Ditton HR as well, because if some of these consultants are doing their own work, with their own clients, if something crops up that perhaps they can't handle, do they bring that into your business?
Yeah, they normally do. On the group chat, there's always someone going, do you know anyone that does GDPR? Do you know anyone that does this? So it then comes into me. So yeah, basically, I mean, I've said this so many times to you guys, but we're all in this together. It's a massive network. There's plenty of people that need our services. Let's just all work together. And 100%, if you give a favour to somebody, it will come back at some point in your favour. So not that you should expect it, but, generally it does. So definitely, I think, it all works out well in the end, really.
And we also hear stories of people working as associates for larger consultancies or established consultancies. That doesn't always go well or end well. And it's great to hear that you started the associate model about 5 years ago, and most of your associates are still with you, but also you've managed to grow their team of associates quite significantly as well. So can you share what some of the good tricks that you've got in your bag that makes it work so well for you and your associates?
You might have to ask them that, but I mean, the way I see it, I'm treating them all like adults, that I'm treating them all like business owners. Like, I've got this piece of work, I'd love to get your help with this. Are you interested? This is what it's about. This is the fee I can pay, all that sort of thing. So they're in control still. And they do say no, it's not like that they have to say yes all the time. Not by any means. I prefer them to say no if they didn't have the capacity or didn't want to do that piece of work. So they're still in control of their own time and their own business. And I think that's really important. It gives them that sort of autonomy. I don't know, working maybe in a bigger place, maybe you're just a smaller cog in a bigger thing. I spend a lot of time speaking to them, mentoring them, supporting them, letting them let off steam to me, all that sort of stuff. I do. That's how I spend my week, that and business development and a bit of client work. And that's what I have to spend my time on. And I think that's the key, really, not just giving it out and forgetting about it and waiting for their invoice to come in and hope it all goes okay. It's much more proactive than that.
That's
And
good.
how do you, for those listening, perhaps how do you protect your business? Because, if you're working with other associates that have got their own businesses, it must be a worry for those just starting out, sort of thinking about whether those associates might take their clients away.
Yeah, I've had this conversation so many times. I mean, I've got every consultant I work with has a consultancy agreement drawn up for each piece of work or each client. So in that, it's drafted, that basically they're not allowed to go off with my clients, take my work and blah, blah. Obviously, that could still happen, but you have to build it on trust and the fact that it won't happen. And then equally in my terms of business with my client, I say, if you want this person to come in-house, then this is the fee for them, sort of thing. And I've had that happen twice where
Oh gosh.
I mean, you're a victim of your own success, really. If you've got a really good consultant, they go in, they love them, they're with them for maybe a year or two, and then they want them. I'm not going to say no and just annoy the client and my consultant. You've got to say, yes, please do, sort of thing. But, I need something in return. And you don't get it all back because obviously you've lost a client and you've lost a consultant. But it's something, it's something that, happens. So I'm kind of, I think if you expect it to happen, then you're not sort of upset or shocked when it does happen. But it's like losing an employee. People leave, don't they, and they move on. So I have that, and obviously I've got all my GDPR sorted. I've got everything on Teams, so if somebody does leave, I've got all their emails. I provide them with their emails. I've got all their documents, all their client documents, so it's not like they're leaving with everything that I've given them or anything. But they could, I suppose, in theory, they could take some of my things and adapt them for themselves, but you can do that in any job.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Key is what you said, which is you need to build relationship on some degree of trust. And yes, you will get, for every 100, you get one unscrupulous person who try to take you to the cleaners, but most people will be decent and will respect the terms and conditions, everything that you have put in place. It's quite interesting that every single client that they work on or project that they pick on, they sign a new terms and conditions as opposed to a blanket, you've joined me, this is the contract that you've signed type thing, I guess, for a client.
Yeah, so I could do it like that. I could do a blanket one and then do like schedules for each new piece of work. But I've just done it that way. But I could do it that way as well, where I just literally, I mean, you just add in the schedule. It's mainly the schedule of work that changes and the start date and the end date, because I want to make it very clear these are all independent contracts and you're not an employee and you're not working for me all the time, all that sort of stuff. I just being very clear. But you could do it the other way. I've seen people do it the other way.
I do think I think that there's a real advantage to the way you're doing it, because if there's a dispute and you're contexting it, then it's limited to that one client or that one relationship, as opposed to a blanket, everyone in the northeast, northwest, southeast, or west, or whatever, which then becomes non-enforceable.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to treat it, because there will be times where somebody doesn't do any work for me for a couple of months, and then it starts again, and and all the clients obviously are overlapping all the time. So I try and keep it quite clear they're all separate things. That's just the way I've always done it, and I just feel more secure doing that.
I think that's it. A really good tip for anyone listening. I would say it's probably worth the little bit of effort. Like you said, the template, the bulk of it will be the same. What might change might be the client name and the schedule of work. But at least you're dealing on a case-by-case basis.
And the pay might change as well. So we have different rates depending on what work they'll be doing, etc.
Okay, so when we were just chatting before we started the recording for this podcast, we were talking about that, the difference in, perhaps having employees and having associates. And you mentioned that you were possibly thinking about taking, maybe the time had come to take on an employee. So what's prompted that?
I think it's having conversations with people that have done it the other way, have gone fully employee, maybe with a few associates. And because it's so big now, and I just think I probably have got enough work now to fill somebody's time, full-time or part-time, someone every week doing the same sort of work. I probably have enough now for them. However, as I said sort of earlier, I really like the fact that we can match up the consultant with the client and the work they need so that it matches perfectly. And I think if you've got an employee, you're going to have to fill their time first. So it will limit to a certain extent what I can offer and in what way. But I just have to get my head around that. It's just a different way of thinking. But I think from a business point of view, it makes more sense because you'll be paying them a lower amount because they're getting all the employee benefits, they've got all the security of being an employee, etc. So from a financial point of view, it probably does make sense. But I haven't taken that leap yet. I'll speak to you again in a year and we'll see if I've done it.
Yeah, we'll be in for the high growth category again next year when you have an employed team as well as an associate team.
Possibly.
Okay. I mean, I think it's really interesting to hear. I've heard you talk a number of times about your model and the way it works, and I'm always very impressed by the way you manage such a big team on an associate model. 'Cause it must be quite difficult to juggle. Tell us a little bit about that.
I actually really enjoy that. I think I should have been like a matchmaker or something. I really love the whole matching people up with the right client, and I love the mentoring and I love that side of things. And I really like the business development, which I never thought I'd say, but liaising with the client, really getting to the bottom of what they need and then giving them a proposal that they're excited about and seeing it come to fruition. So I really enjoy that. And some of them, some of like the HR administrators are very good. They're really experienced people. They don't really contact me all the time. They get on with it really and contact me, as and when they need to. So it's not like I'm on the phone to them all the whole time like you might be with an employee. I think they're all a bit more independent because they are all independents themselves. So yeah, so that it doesn't take up all my time by any means, but there are peaks and troughs definitely. And my main consultants I do speak to several times a week.
Yeah.
And so I think I get worried.
Yeah, no, I imagine you do, but I think we've spoken in the past around this idea of stepping out of sort of the delivery yourself, that actually there comes a point in time where you have to step a little bit out of delivery and into running and managing the delivery as opposed to actually doing the delivery yourself.
Yeah, and that's what I did. I did it nearly 2 years ago now, and it was brought on by some life events that I had going on. I had to step out of the business, and I was lucky that I could do that. If it had just been me, I couldn't have done that. So I already had the team established. So I made the difficult decision to pass all my clients, one of which I'd had for like 9 years, to one of my team. And I've had this come up so many times by people talking to me, how do you do that? How did the client react? And it was difficult, especially with, your favorite clients you've had a long time. It is difficult. But one, you're still in the business, you're still seeing them, you're still hearing what they're up to, and you're still involved even from the background. And I had to basically slowly drip feed them into the business, but ultimately they trust me and they trust who I trust. So it didn't take that long before I was forgotten about and it was all fine. But they adjusted to this new person, and because it's still the way I work, the Ditton HR way, as it were, it didn't really make that much difference. They just had to build a relationship and confidence up with that new person. But I hear that a lot, like, how do you pull out? How would your clients say? It happens all the time though, doesn't it, in business? They don't always deal with the business owner. I mean, it's rare now that you would actually have an operational delivery person being the business owner. So I did step out. It was difficult at first, but now, like I said, I really enjoy it because I'm not dictated by clients necessarily. The stuff I do can all be very flexible. So it does suit me. But I do a bit of client work here and there, especially if it's something I'm really passionate about, like psychometric testing or coaching or some other things that I think, oh, that's really good. I will get involved because I can't resist.
I think that's really good, and that lays a strong foundation for succession planning, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
When start your business, the way sort of I did a mini MBA years ago, and the way the person leading the course said is, you go into a business or you go into an employment with an exit strategy in mind. And his positioning was, you sit there in the interview or talking to somebody, you should always have an exit strategy in mind. And at the time, you kind of sat there thinking, that's interesting, but they were far from wrong. And the module that you have in place kind of almost allows you to, if you wanted tomorrow, to be able to step away and your business still run quite functionally well without you being there.
Yeah, exactly. And if I had to step out completely, I'd have to have some sort of managing director that did the whole client liaison and the whole, business development. You could get someone to do quite easily, but the actual core of it, I'd have to get somebody in. But a lot of businesses do that. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I didn't have the exit strategy in mind when I started this, by the way. It just happened by accident, but I'm pleased that it did. It happened because I had to do it. I had to step away. And I hear a lot, people are very, they're burnt out, business owners. They're working ridiculous hours. And, it's a horrible feeling. I know it's a horrible feeling when you haven't got enough hours in the day, or you've got a really stressful case going on. You just haven't got enough time. And also the people that I get to do the work now, they're specialists in those areas. They're better than I am at it. They know that area. So it's good all round, really.
Well, you've got to have headspace. You've got to have capacity to think, haven't you, really? Sometimes you've just got to have thinking time and time to work on your business rather than in your business.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is a real mindset shift, that change from, I am the person in the business, exactly what Pinky was talking about at the conference last week, I am my business, and what does that mean? So it's definitely a jump and a leap. But I think once you take it, I think it's a good move to take.
Yeah, no, it's worked for me. I mean, if I was in my business doing the client work all the time, I'd earn more money, definitely, I would be. But it's more about the holistic view and balancing everyone's needs. And, for me, it's worked fine, and it's exactly what I want. So.
And I think, yes, you're right. You would earn more money personally, but probably your annual turnover might not be anywhere near it if it was just you, because there's so much that you can deliver when you're on your own compared to when you have others working with you. So.
Exactly. And I can expand now. Now I'm in the position I can expand, and then obviously with that will come more income. So there is that possibility. I was hearing people talking at your conference and the winner of the high growth, thinking, well, she's only been able to do that with that because she's got a big team. So if it's just you on your own, you are limited.
You are. Yeah, I think you definitely are limited. And I think it takes time to build, but then momentum is a good thing. You will build momentum as you go. And I think it becomes easier, and the growth sort of comes naturally by having additional people on the team, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then you've got those people, they're obviously meeting people themselves, and they're bringing things back into the team. But some of them are bringing work back in because they want to work that person, but they want to do it through the safety of Ditton HR sort of umbrella. They don't necessarily want to go off and do that on their own. They're not quite there yet.
No, and I suppose, of course, we can bring. I mean, a lot of us go into HR, don't we, because of a passion for good people practices and delivering, helping businesses deliver solutions and initiatives that actually are about good people care, management and support. And actually by growing the business, it means we can do more of that with more businesses.
Yes, true. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just sort of wrap up then, perhaps with some top tips. So if there's anybody listening today that's thinking, right, okay, that's really inspired me, I am going to take the next steps to grow my business, what would be your sort of starting block top tips? What would be the first things to do?
Okay, so it would be to have a really good consultancy agreement ready to go. Have a think about what standards you want that person to have, and kind of give them that induction, because what you don't want is them just going off and doing their own thing straight away. And start small, start with just one, test the water, give them one client of yours, see how that goes, and then build it up from there, rather than sort of jumping straight in and having like 20 different associates. I would start filling up a couple of really good trusted ones first, because else you're going to have, if you had a lot, which I have heard people wanting to spread it all out, you've then got all those different people you're dealing with and maybe not much work coming in from each of them. So keep it small, be prepared with your, protect your business with a good consultancy agreement, and then just give it a go with just one client, one associate, and grow it from there. There's no rush.
Excellent.
Great advice.
Yeah, that's great tips. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you ever so much for joining us. You're always a great advocate for HRI, and we love having you in the community. You're always very, again, like most people in our community, you're very generous with your tips on the information that you share. So thank you for doing that today. We really appreciate that. And
Thank you for inviting me on. It's lovely to speak to you both. Our
listeners will be very inspired now, will be out there planning to take on associates and grow their business. Okay, so thanks everyone for listening this week. Look out for our next events, and we'll speak to you very soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.